Thank you for joining us today on the Anesthesia and Perioperative Medicine channel.
Willkommen auf dem Kanal für Anästhesie und périopérative Medizin. Merci de nous avoir rejoints aujourd'hui sur la chaîne Anesthésie et Médecine périopératoire.
In this explainer, we're going to take a deep dive into a piece of equipment that is, without a doubt, our silent and indispensable partner in every single procedure, the modern Anesthesia Workstation. It's a device we trust with our patients' lives every single day. But if we're honest, its sheer complexity is often taken for granted. So today, we're going to change that. We're going to trace the path of every single breath from the hospital wall right to the patient's lungs, and in doing so, uncover the really elegant engineering and the critical safety features that make our work possible.
It's really quite humbling to look back at where we came from. Just look at this image. It shows one of the very first ether inhalers. At its core, it's basically a glass jar with a soaked sponge inside. There was absolutely no control over the concentration being delivered, no real-time monitoring of ventilation or oxygenation, just the provider's eyes, ears, and experience. Now, contrast that with the symphony of sensors, valves, microprocessors, and software that makes up today's integrated systems. The technology is just worlds apart, isn't it? But what's so important to remember is that the mission, that fundamental principle of delivering inhaled anesthetics safely and controllably, has been our guiding star from the very, very beginning. So, to really get to grips with this machine, we're going to follow a very logical path, almost like a detective tracing a clue. First, we'll start with a brief look at its history, just to set the stage. Then, we'll get to the real heart of it, following the gas from its source right through the intricate internal pathways of the machine. After that, we'll explore how that gas gets mixed with the anesthetic agent in the vaporizers and delivered to the patient through the breathing circuit. And finally, we'll cover the absolutely essential safeguards, how we get rid of waste gas, and, most importantly, the checks we must perform to ensure everything is working perfectly before we even begin a case.
So let's begin with part one. You see, the story of the anesthesia machine isn't just about technology for technology's sake. It's really a narrative of relentless innovation, where every new gear, every new sensor, every new alarm has been driven by one singular goal: making anesthesia safer for our patients. To truly appreciate the sophisticated and frankly brilliant systems we have at our fingertips today, we really need to understand the problems their predecessors were designed to solve.
This timeline really illustrates those key leaps forward beautifully. Back in the 1840s, as we saw, things were rudimentary at best. Then, the early 20th century brought the first real attempts at genuine control. We saw the introduction of flow meters, giving us some measure of the gases we were delivering, and the concept of carbon dioxide absorption, which opened the door to rebreathing systems. The mid-20th century was an absolutely crucial era for safety. This is when agent-specific vaporizers were developed to prevent the catastrophic error of putting the wrong agent in, and safety interlocks were introduced to stop more than one from being turned on at a time. By the late 20th century, electronics began to completely transform the machine. We started integrating physiological monitoring and advanced ventilator modes right into the workstation itself. And all of that brings us to today, where we have these incredibly sophisticated workstations with automated self-checks and even algorithms for target-controlled anesthesia. The trajectory is crystal clear. It's been a constant move away from approximation and towards precision, away from manual observation and towards integrated data-driven control. Now for part two. This is where we get into the real nuts and bolts of the machine. We're going to trace the pneumatic journey of the medical gases right through the internal plumbing of the workstation. Now, I know this can seem a bit dry, but understanding this physical pathway is absolutely the key to both using the workstation effectively and, crucially, troubleshooting it when you're under pressure. We'll follow the flow logically, from the high-pressure sources right up to the point where it's ready for the patient. The key to understanding the machine's internal workings, and to not getting lost, is this concept of three distinct pressure zones. Everything that happens to the gas before it reaches the patient's breathing circuit happens within one of these three zones. You have the high-pressure system, which deals with the immense pressures from the cylinders. Then there's the intermediate pressure system, which handles the regulated, stable pipeline pressure. And finally, you have the low-pressure system, which is where all the fine control of gas flow and vaporization actually occurs. We're going to break down each one. The journey for most of the gases we use begins right here, at the wall pipeline supply. And right at this very first connection point, we encounter a critical safety feature designed to prevent a potentially catastrophic gas misconnection. Two primary systems are used. On the left, you can see the Diameter Index Safety System, or DIS. It's quite clever. It uses unique, gas-specific diameters and threading to make sure that an oxygen hose can only connect to an oxygen outlet. On the right, we have quick couplers, which use a unique pattern of pins and slots for each gas. It's a different approach to the same problem. These simple, elegant mechanical designs form our very first line of defense against human error. So let's just nail down the difference between these two critical safety systems, because the acronyms are a bit similar. Think of it this way. PIS, the Pin Index Safety System, is for the high-pressure world of the backup E-cylinders. It uses that unique two-pin pattern on the hanger yoke to physically block you from mounting, say, a nitrous cylinder on an oxygen yoke. The pins simply won't line up. DISS, which we just saw, is for the lower intermediate pressure world of the wall pipelines. It doesn't use pins. It uses unique diameters and threads to stop you from connecting the wrong hose. So the core principle is exactly the same. Make it physically impossible to make a dangerous connection. High-pressure cylinders get pins, intermediate pressure pipelines get different diameters. This table is fantastic because it maps out those three pressure zones so clearly. Let's just walk through it together. First, you've got the high-pressure system. It begins with the absolutely immense pressure inside an E-cylinder. We're talking up to 2,200 psig for oxygen. And it includes the hanger yoke, the PIS, and the pressure gauge. Its job ends right after the first stage regulator, which drastically steps that pressure down. That's where the intermediate pressure system takes over, starting at a much more manageable and consistent 50 to 55 psig, coming either from the pipeline or from that cylinder regulator. This is the zone where you find things like the oxygen flush valve and the failsafe valves. And finally, once the gas passes the flow control valves, the knobs we turn, we enter the low-pressure system. Here, with the flow meters and the vaporizers, the pressure is barely above atmospheric pressure. Now, this is a crucial point we're going to come back to. Precisely because of its low pressure, this is the part of the machine that is most susceptible to dangerous leaks. Now, this is one of those critical safety drills that we must all commit to memory. In the rare but absolutely catastrophic event of a pipeline crossover, let's say nitrous oxide is somehow flowing through the oxygen line, two actions are mandatory. First, you must open your backup oxygen E-cylinder. But, and this is the vital part, that is not enough on its own. The pipeline pressure is typically higher than the pressure delivered by the cylinder's regulator. So if you don't physically disconnect the wall supply hose from the machine, the contaminated gas from the pipeline will continue to flow preferentially to the patient, overriding your backup cylinder. So the crucial point is this: you must do both. Open the cylinder and physically disconnect the wall supply hose. Modern workstations employ multiple redundant layers of safety, a series of safety nets, if you will, all designed to prevent the delivery of a hypoxic mixture. The first line of defense is the supply failure alarm, a loud, unmistakable warning if the oxygen pipeline pressure drops. If that pressure continues to fall, the fail-safe valves act as a second net. They're designed to proportionally reduce or completely shut off the flow of other gases like nitrous oxide if the oxygen pressure is lost. A third net is the proportioning system, or hypoxic guard. This is a mechanical or pneumatic link that physically prevents you from setting a dangerously low oxygen concentration in the first place. But after all of those upstream protections, the final and most crucial safeguard is the oxygen analyzer. It is the only device that directly measures what's in the gas mixture just before it reaches the patient. It's our last and most important line of defense. As we've mentioned, that low-pressure system, the part that starts at the flow control valves and includes the flow meters and vaporizers, is the part of the machine most susceptible to leaks. And a leak here is particularly insidious because it's downstream from most of the safety devices we've just discussed. For instance, a leak in a flow meter could allow oxygen to escape into the room while the nitrous oxide continues onto the patient, creating a hypoxic mixture without you even realizing it. Or, a leak around a poorly seated vaporizer could lead to the delivery of an inadequate concentration of anesthetic agent, which risks patient awareness. This is precisely why a thorough low-pressure leak test is an absolutely non-negotiable part of the pre-anesthesia checkout. Okay, so we've successfully brought our gases from their source, we've regulated their pressure, and we've blended them. In part 3, we're going to look at the final crucial steps of this journey: how we add the volatile anesthetic agent, and then how we deliver the complete mixture to the patient using the breathing system. This is where the machine interfaces directly with the patient. Breathing systems are all about how we manage rebreathing. At one extreme, you have an open system, like the old-school ether-on gauze. There's no rebreathing at all. A semi-open system, like a Mapleson circuit, which we often use for induction, uses a very high fresh gas flow to flush out all the CO2, keeping rebreathing to a minimum. But the real workhorse of modern anesthesia is the semi-closed system. Here, we deliberately use a lower fresh gas flow, one that's less than the patient's minute volume, which means the patient partially rebreathes their exhaled gas. This is fantastic because it's more economical and it conserves heat and humidity. But, and this is the key point, it absolutely requires a carbon dioxide absorber. At the far other extreme is a fully closed system, a very delicate balance where the fresh gas flow perfectly matches what the patient is consuming. But for our routine maintenance, that semi-closed system offers the best combination of control, efficiency, and safety. So the circle system is the heart of modern anesthesia, and it's made of these 7 essential parts, all working in perfect synchrony. Let's follow the path. Fresh gas enters from the machine. It flows past a one-way inspiratory valve, through the corrugated breathing tube to the Y-piece and then on to the patient. The patient's exhaled gas then returns through the other tube, and it's immediately forced to pass through a one-way expiratory valve. These 2 valves are critical. They ensure gas can only flow in one direction, preventing the rebreathing of CO2-laden gas directly. From there, the gas meets the reservoir bag, which allows for manual ventilation, and the APL valve, which vents any excess gas. And finally, and most critically, the gas is directed through the CO2 absorber canister, which chemically scrubs the CO2 before the gas rejoins the fresh flow to complete the circle. It's a truly elegant design.
Now, how do we actually add the volatile agent into the system? Well, that's the job of the vaporizer, and it's a truly remarkable piece of engineering. Its purpose seems simple enough: turn a liquid anesthetic into a vapor and add a precise amount to the gas flow. But doing this with incredible precision, predictability, and stability, regardless of the fresh gas flow rates or the ambient temperature, is an immense technical challenge. And that precision is absolutely non-negotiable for safe anesthesia.
Because delivering an incorrect dose of these potent agents is so dangerous, modern vaporizers are packed with ingenious safety features. First, they are agent-specific. A sevoflurane vaporizer can only be used for sevoflurane. They have keyed filling systems, where the bottle adapter for the agent has a unique shape that will only fit into the correct vaporizer, making it physically impossible to misfill. The interlock system is a mechanism on the manifold that physically prevents more than one vaporizer from being turned on at the same time. But perhaps the most brilliant internal mechanism is for temperature compensation. The process of vaporization cools the liquid agent, which would normally decrease its vapor pressure and therefore its output. To counteract this, vaporizers have automatic temperature compensation mechanisms, often using bimetallic strips to maintain a constant, steady output across a wide range of temperatures.
We now arrive at our final but absolutely critical section. We've traced the gas to the patient and back again, but our responsibility doesn't end there. We have to safely manage the waste gas, and, most importantly of all, we must confirm that every single component we've just discussed is working perfectly. This is all about the final safeguards: scavenging and the pre-anesthetic safety checkout.
Scavenging systems are essential for occupational health, protecting everyone in the operating room from chronic exposure to waste anesthetic gases. There are 2 main types. An active system connects to the hospital's central vacuum suction to actively draw waste gases away. This is very effective, but it requires an interface with both positive and negative pressure relief valves to protect the patient's breathing circuit from the effects of that suction. A passive system, on the other hand, is much simpler. It just directs waste gas through a wide tube to the room's ventilation exhaust grill, relying on the patient's expiratory pressure and the fresh gas flow to move the gas along, without any applied suction.
I want to pause on this slide because it contains what is arguably the single most important principle in all of anesthesia safety. If you ever encounter a situation where you cannot ventilate or you cannot oxygenate your patient and you suspect an equipment issue, your first action is not to troubleshoot the machine. Your first action is to disconnect the patient from the circuit and immediately begin ventilating them with an alternative method, like a self-inflating bag connected to your backup oxygen cylinder. Patient safety always comes first. You troubleshoot the workstation only after the patient is stable and being safely oxygenated.
The pre-anesthesia checkout is our systematic defense against equipment failure. And while the full FDA-recommended checklist is extensive, these are the core, non-negotiable pillars of that check. First, you must verify you have a working backup for ventilation, a self-inflating bag. You must then manually check your O2 cylinder pressure. Don't just rely on the machine's gauge for this initial check. Next, verify your pipeline pressures are sufficient, usually above 50 psig. Then, you must perform that absolutely critical leak test on the vulnerable low-pressure system. After that, check that your scavenging system is connected and functioning. And finally, calibrate your oxygen monitor to room air and test its low concentration alarm. This isn't just a checklist to be ticked off. It's a professional ritual that ensures patient safety from the very start.
This table really summarizes why that checkout procedure is so incredibly vital. It directly links common malfunctions to their potentially devastating consequences. A gas supply crossover isn't just a technical fault, it can lead directly to catastrophic hypoxia. A leak in that low-pressure system, as we've discussed, isn't just a small hiss, it can lead to a hypoxic mixture or, terrifyingly, patient awareness. Misfilling or tipping a vaporizer can lead to a massive anesthetic overdose. And within the breathing circuit itself, a simple disconnection is a leading cause of harm, while a stuck unidirectional valve can lead to severe CO2 rebreathing or a complete inability to ventilate. Understanding these failure modes and their risks is what reinforces the profound importance of our vigilance.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. Our workstations are becoming ever more sophisticated, with automated checkout procedures and complex algorithms. And while these are fantastic advances, they can sometimes lull us into a false sense of security. But as we've seen throughout this explainer, they are not infallible. No automated check can verify that a self-inflating bag is present and functional at the bedside. No algorithm can replace the clinician's vigilance and intuition. So I'll leave you with this question to consider. As our technology continues to advance, what is the single most important human check? That element of our own professional practice and awareness that we can never, ever afford to automate or overlook. Thank you for joining this explainer.